2 of these games are potentially top 10 of the year of 2025. All 4, however, deserve your attention, your table space, your collection space, because they're just going to be games that you just can't get out of your mind. Let's freaking go.
First up, Scorpion, Mosque, and Tag Team. This is a top 10 game of the year, potentially. The concept is very simple. You've heard it before, but you haven't seen it really done in this way. Now, it gives me Sakura Arm vibes, but it's with an auto battle situation instead, where you grab your fighter, your tag team, grab 2 of their decks, mix them together, rinse and repeat, go head to head. Now, the looniness and the auto battling of tag team, in theory, shouldn't work as well as it does, but this is potentially a top 10 game of the year with a deck building, bag building, with a deck building auto battle situation that we haven't really seen the likes of. And with Scorpion Mosque's latest 2-player hit game, they knock it out of the park. Your characters in front of you, you draft or choose however you so want. Grab your character decks, shuffle them up together, and then go. Because this game at its core is very simple. You have 2 cards down, you just flip over the top card, determining which of your players is going to go, both as the attacker and the defender. And therein lies the second portion of things, which is the clever, tactical, loony, and craziness with an overarching feeling like you have control, but ultimately don't have as much as you want, where you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one of them, and then the other part of both the luck as well as the strategy comes in. You know that you only have 1 card remaining. Can you remember what that card was? Because it might have just been put out last turn. It might have been put out turns ago. Because you take one of these cards and you choose it, not only choosing which character, which also matters significantly, but you also have to choose whether or not it's going to be the next card played, or it's going to be subsequently replacing the bottom card there. Which means, again, if you don't remember what this top one is, are you better off having it go next? Or are you better off trying to wait and, well, recall memory style, if you can, later? Now, the other aspect is, like I mentioned, this top card determines the attacker and the defender. The endgame condition here for this game is just not knock out everybody. It's knock out one of the opponent's 2 fighters. That's all you need to achieve victory. So if you're having the wrong one attack and defend, that's trouble. Now, the tricky part about this is that you can have some synergy up the wazoo combo-wise with this game, because a lot of your options not only are predicated on your hero, but they're predicated on the person that is waiting to be tagged in, because you are going to have cards that allow you to manipulate and give things back and forth between characters. And so those are the nuances that you're trying to manage as you go through these cards. Which, when, how, because the number of cubes that you're given in the form of these little purple dinglies there allow you to strengthen your attacks. And again, those also can be transferred between characters. So the when and the how and the combo between all of these is the absolute magnificent masterpiece. This game is absolutely fantastic for a 15-minute or less style of, I want to get the full head-to-head experience with the lower overhead while still having a significant degree of actual complexity, strategy, as well as witch's brew of luck thrown in there. The biggest detriment for this game is that you may not like the pure randomness that is not fully mitigated by the draw 3, pick 1, flip and put wherever you want on the pile. The other main problem that I have with this game, as a very, very surface level criticism, is that it's very anticlimactic if you are really, really strategic, because if you can never draw 3 at the end of the game from your deck, it's a draw if no one is knocked out before that. And that's just not what you go for. You go for the KO! And again, it's plays fast enough that you'll be fine with it at the same time. This game also, like many of these games, can be played very surface level, casual. But like an unmatched style situation, if you really want to dive deep, that's really where this game is deceptive. Because the repeated play of learning the character's abilities and how they're going to be interacting and creating a draft in order to actually have the most amount of strategy in the first place is not what our hobby is good at right now. But if you do that, this game will pay off much larger than the box or the cost size in the first place. Because that ratio to depth of play, fun factor, as well as cost and overhead cannot be overlooked, because it is a significant factor. And that's why games like this, games like I previously talked about, a Duel for Cardia, when we have the crowdfunding massives, this is better than 97% on either side, just on the surface, let alone if you feel like scratching its depths. Now we're talking the next in the latest hard cooperative limited communication games in the form of Tranquility Descent. What has this game got going on? Well, Chris, this game isn't hard. All you got to do is put the cards in numerical order, ascending, and do that 5 times. That's super. Nope, it's not easy, and let me tell you why. You have a deck of cards here that is 84 deep, representing the 4 different elemental symbols that you're going to have at your disposal. And the reason I'm showing you both sides of the cards here is because both sides matter. Each of these different 4 are numbered 1 to 21. Okay, makes sense, Chris. No big deal. Haven't shown you the twist yet. The twist is in the approach. You are going to have 8 different columns that you need to fill up in 5 rows, doing the same thing over and over again. But you can only play in the row you are currently on until it is completely filled up. If you run out of cards or you can't do a row, you lose. And in the player count dependent game, 4 or 5 cards are in your hand. You order them numerically, again, ascending, so you can see what you've got. But you can also see what your friends have as well, because you're going to be looking around saying, hey, is that fire one at the low end? Oh, okay, maybe I should put a fire card down, because here's the twist with this game. You cannot just play a card down. You have to have a matching element card burned, essentially, so to speak, from the fire card of things, but not actually burned. But you know what I'm saying is, in order to play a fire card number-wise face up, I have to have another number card face down first, and then I can subsequently play one on top. So, using this 1 as the example, I want to play this face up in the far left column, which means I need another fire card. I don't have another fire card. What am I going to do on my turn? Well, I've got a lot of middling cards in the form of the water, so maybe I'll play one of these middling cards right here, which is telling people, I think maybe I don't have the lowest water card, but I clearly don't have the highest water card. Rinse and repeat. Draw back up, fill your hand. The other nice thing at the 2-player count, it gives you some mitigation, because it actually takes this huge freaking stack of cards and offers you 2 stacks. And I like that at sort of even the higher player counts, but that wouldn't be as challenging then. So the other element of things is this is just the base game, and you can sit there and do the maths and go, okay, Chris, if I have to lay 40 of these cards down and potentially 40 of them face up, that doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room in the total number of cards that you've said. Well, there are a few other small caveats. There are little canary tokens you can use to say, well, not like they actually use them in the mines to tell miners that gas was coming and they were going to die, but you might want to pay attention to what I'm doing, because this is going to be a very, very important in a limited communication style of things. The other element of this is when you get to the bottom of the game, there are going to be wild cards at the bottom of the deck, and they're going to allow you to just play anywhere. It's freaking awesome. The other small twist in there is that you can do 2 other things with cards. Can't do anything, don't want to do anything, don't want to burn a card. 3 of a kind gets you the 3 of a kind wild, so you can then replace if you so choose. The other aspect is a little bit tricky. What I've given you is now a setup for the other card, and this is a mining card. And this card allows you to manipulate the previous rows in order to either push a card out or potentially pull a card down, but it has to, again, match the color of the card. So this is the water one. So I could place the water one here or here, for example, and pull this card down and replace it. So it still needs to fit in the new row. So if I played cards down already here, that would not allow the 15 to be there in ascending order. It would not work. But otherwise, it's a good free replacement that has one for each of the elements, just like the Wilds. Now, this doesn't include the 2 little mini expansion modules that come along with it, and the mine cart, as well as the fox den, in order to keep track of other things in case this isn't hard enough in the first place. And also, if you're wondering what the cards at the top are, well, they're the surface world. But if you flip them over, they actually give you, again, different objectives that allow you to have to manage something else in the form of the column, having 4 cards of that kind in the column, but also then having a sum total there. So they all give you different options because you're just randomly putting these down in the first place. It's freaking hard, it freaking works, and it's gonna freaking leave you a little bit frustrated, a little bit happy if you can actually make it all the way down. Truth be told, though, with this, you are probably more luck dependent than a lot of the other limited communication games that I've played. And although it offers a different experience, it's going to be probably also more frustrating if you're one of those people. This is overarchingly sort of like the game in the sense that how close can you get, because you're going to lose, and you're going to lose. But if that fun in the frustration is what you're looking for, this one is outstanding. But because it's definitely a huge deck, not really a whole lot of mitigation, even though you've got those 2 ways I've shown you, they are very, very limited in their use. And so it's going to be also a lesson frustration because, again, it takes the big deck and makes it the main object that you're trying to deal with. Now we have this little fantastic 18-card button-shy-esque style game in the form of Pyrotechnics. And this is going to look really straightforward, but this is the one that makes you feel like the smartest person at the table. Because what we've got going on is a resource management card manipulation. I'm going to be better at it than you. So essentially what you've got here is multi-use cards. At the beginning of the game, there's a 5-card tableau. You get 5 cards in your hand. On a turn-by-turn basis, all you do is 2 things. So you'll notice that as we have these cards here, there are 3 different areas. This in the upper left is what you get when you play the card from your hand. Lower left is what you get if you grab it from the tableau. Lower right is what it costs to create this card. And the goal of this game is to create 5 of these cards. And so this is what's going to happen. It's going to do the opposite of what you're used to. This is not a runaway leader. This is a catch up from behind style game to make it always as tense as you're looking for in a 2-player head-to-head style card-driven manner. Because on a turn-by-turn basis, you're only doing 2 things. 1, you are playing a card from your hand for the icons in the upper left-hand corner. In this case, I get one of the red tokens, and I have the ability to do an exchange. Exchanges are just like colors in real life. Red and yellow makes orange. Yellow and blue makes green. Red and blue makes purple. So you get to choose from the tokens you have in your hand to make one of those exchanges. Subsequently then, you put this card down to the tableau. And then the second action takes place is you grab one of these cards for one of the bottom uses. If I can buy the card and pay the cost to get it in my final tableau as one of my 5 to win, then you do that. However, you're not going to be able to do that a bunch of the time, so you need to take the action that's in the lower left-hand corner. And so then in this case, you get to do whatever it says. And you'll notice that there are multicolor different sparks there in order to not only get ones from the tableau, get ones from the pool, but also you may have to give your opponent some in order to balance out the cost of the card. So in this case, if I take this, I get another red card, and this card that I just used goes into my hand. Therein lies the balance, because if I bought this card instead of using its ability, it will go in my tableau. This card still gets replaced in the market. Now I only have 4 cards in my hand to choose from, which is going to make it harder for me to succeed to be able to buy one of these in the future. I have less available in front of me. Chris, you're going, well, this just becomes a perfect information meta style. Nope, it doesn't. Because the trick in this game is that at the beginning, before anything is dealt out, you take 3 of these cards and you put them aside face down so nobody knows which 3 aren't going to be there, which leaves you again scrambling on what's out there. That's it. You can exchange, you can manipulate, you're forced to give tokens to other people. You're going to hate draft. This is going to be looking at what colors of the sparks the other person has, what is out there in the tableau that's left, because maybe there's only these 2 left and the next person gets one wins. You're going to have some hate draft in between that and the one card in your hand that's left over. Can you manipulate it better than your opponent? That's Pyrotechnics, and that's why it's freaking awesome, because it's going to give you that brain burniness, again, with that low ratio of overhead rules, as well as ease to get to the table. It's pretty awesome. Now, last but certainly not least, because this one also has one of the highest ceilings for a card game of 2025, is a Wild Venture. And this is a crazy spin on that similar theme that we've seen of a large deck of cards. However, in this deck, they are all asymmetric. You're going to have 3 different types of cards with 3 different species that they represent, from rabbits, crows, and frogs, buildings, relics, and villagers with these cards. And you're going to create a tableau that will eventually allow you to win the game, to score more victory points when this massive frickin' mother of a deck finally runs out. But the trick is how you're playing this game, because it does it in a way, though vaguely similar, takes a twist on what you're familiar with and does it in a unique way to give it a spot in your collection, because that's already what you're wondering when you see these elements together. You're going to be venturing not only with a card-driven tableau, but also across a map, adventuring to create further combinations between the physical movement and the action, almost programming, but guiding, if you will, because your tableau is going to be made up of 3 tiers of those cards that I just mentioned. It starts out with the buildings at the bottom here, which allow you to take basic actions when you're beginning the game, instead of being able to play cards from your hand, because on a turn-by-turn basis, you get 2 main actions and free actions. Main actions are going to be the actions at the bottom of these cards. However, the thing that you will not have at the beginning of the game is other cards out up here. Once you have the ability to pay the cost in the upper left-hand corner, you can subsequently lay them out to your tableau. This, though, is the trick and the twist. When you pay 4 coin to get the party hat into your tableau as a relic, you put 3 counters on it that are represented by the bag tokens here. Each time, then, for your main action, you can choose to take the action down here just like you would with one of your buildings. However, once all of these bags are off, this card can no longer be used. And so then therein lies the tricky dilemma of this combo-driven situation. You want to actually deplete this so it sits in your tableau and is unusable. Why would I want that, Chris? Because that plays into the main way you are scoring, and it directly links to this adventure board. This adventure board is also very important because there are 3 paths on this adventure board in which you reach a treasure chest at the end. What it gives you also is the scoring for the end game, because then when you reach the end, any of those cards that I just mentioned in your tableau that do not have any of these tokens still on them, they're put in your discard. Your discard is what scores at the end in a set collection manner. Remember when I said there are 3 types of 3 different cards, 3 different types of cards themselves, the relics, the villagers, and the buildings, but also the crows, the frogs, and the rabbits. For the crows, the frog, and the rabbits, this is how you set collect score at the end. Now, this is a relic, which means that actually when it gets discarded or tucked, if you will, you get to do what the belt says. However, when you do the end game scoring, it matters for the villagers. And what you do for the villagers is you take your lowest villager pile, if it was crows, multiplied by your highest villager pile, maybe frogs. So if I have 3 crows and 7 frogs, that's 21 points. Subsequently, buildings score in a different way, as you will put them out in your tableau, giving you other abilities that will give you passive upgrades to help you when you take the subsequent actions here and here. You also can score those as extra points at the end, but you also have to activate them because each of them is going to have different ways of activating, and you can only activate 3 of your buildings with these little ladybug tiles at the end of the game that are acquired in various spots along the path. And so that is what you're going to be having to do, not only potentially end game, but during game, because they only score if they're upgraded. Now, subsequently, your regular buildings can also be upgraded via the use of these paths as you go along the way, getting you additional monies and additional cards and additional chests. Because the other thing that's different about this game is, although you start with a hand of cards here that you're going to be buying from your hand and playing into your tableau and putting the tokens down accordingly, well, that's all well and good, but this is not I get cards back in my hand after I draw. So you need to be aggressive in refilling, because if your hand doesn't get refilled, your tableau doesn't get refilled. If your tableau doesn't get refilled, then you have jack squat for better actions. Because let me be very clear, these buildings that are starters, they're nice. They're even better when they get upgraded, but they are trivial comparatively once your engine starts going and your tableau starts producing comparatively to what the other cards will have. And that is the balancing act that you are doing between the cards, the board, as well as the getting rid of the good actions. This is not a game where you get the good actions and you can just burn them and abuse them. Because when you burn it and you abuse it, then you reach the end of the path, then you get rid of it because you only have so many uses. You are using and abusing, in a good way, these cards in order to tuck them, to give them second life as an endgame scoring condition. And the scoring is not just limited to that. The buildings themselves will score. For each supply that potentially gets put on a building, because some of these buildings will allow you to gather them, you'll get points. However, the gear that I previously mentioned is not included in that multiplier for the villagers. But the gear is actually multiplied by the number of buildings that have enchantment tokens on them. Enchantment tokens that are activating powers on the buildings only a limited amount of times, because you have 3 of these ladybugs, so you can only do it 3 times. Multiplied by potentially the gear. So that is the other scoring dynamic that you are Feldian point buffeting here at the end of the game. And again, this deck, I'm not kidding, this deck is all asymmetric. And so you're going to see just how clever and how good you can do in terms of what you're given. The better person is going to win because they're going to be able to take what is given off of the top of the randomness of this deck and outplay your opponent. And that's what you want in this 2-player game. By the way, did I mention that there's actually 3 of these characters? They start with just a slightly different starter. No big deal. Not really asymmetric, so that's not a biggie. And also, depending on how advanced you want to be, we got 2 different sides of the board to give you different tracks to venture down each time. And that is a wild venture, and that's why it's pretty freaking outstanding.